In the Pits is partnered with Compete. Compete is a Texas-based brand by Jell Stewart of professional team AC Diesel that provides custom jerseys, pants, headbands, straps, tech shirts, and any other soft goods to help individuals and teams compete at the highest level. Support Texas Paintball and message Compete on Facebook or Instagram and mention In the Pits Podcast for 10% off your entire order. In the Pits is partnered with Get Dat Shot. Get Dat Shot now offers first-in-line photo and video editing, 20% off Get Dat Shot merch, and 20% off prints to all teams that wear the Get Dat Shot logo on their jersey. Message GetDat_shot on Facebook or Instagram to become a Get Dat Shot program team. In the Pits is partnered with Paintball Kumite. Paintball Kumite is a program designed by Colt Roberts of professional team San Antonio X Factor to take paintball players of all ages, experience levels, and skill groups and mold them into champions. The program breaks the game down into small, easy-to-learn sessions designed to help you master the fundamentals so that you can elevate your game. Newcomers to the program get a free 1-hour introductory class when mentioning In the Pits. To sign up for a class, message @PaintballKumite on Instagram. Welcome everyone to episode 20 of In the Pits Paintball Podcast. This podcast is focused on everything that has to do with the paintball scene here in Texas, from professional players and teams to new divisional programs, local tournament series, field owners, Texas-based brands, even photographers and videographers. Every week we will have a short and sweet episode with a new topic and special guest. I'm Christian Smith. I'm a player for the Texas Titans, and this episode we are going in the pits with James Cobb, aka Beaux, captain of Valhalla mechanical paintball team. James, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Christian. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So, those of y'all that are listening, I was actually supposed to have Nico Hyde on tonight, but Nico had a scheduling conflict, so I, scrambled to get someone in last minute, and James was available. He, agreed on short notice to come on to do this. And so James, I appreciate you for filling in, and we've definitely got a lot to talk about. You're definitely a big figure here in Texas. So James, for those listening that maybe don't know about you personally, so how long have you been involved in the Texas paintball scene?
Well, again, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this. I started playing paintball back in 1988. I was a young college student. Had a guy I went to class with at art school was a paintball player, and he's like, "Oh, you need to come out and play." I heard about it before. At the time it was survival games. And finally, one weekend, I didn't have anything to do. Like all my assignments were done. So I was like, "Oh, sure." Hopped in the car with him and a couple of his buddies. Went out and played at survival games in Texas and Houston. Was hooked immediately. Every weekend since was playing, and 2 times a weekend. Immediately dove straight into teams and whatnot. So yeah, long story short, about 34 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's definitely a lot longer than I've been in the scene. I'll tell you that at least.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, like longer than I've been on the scene on planet Earth.
That's not that common for me to hear. Like
Yep.
there was a time when I was running a paintball tournament series in Houston where, as I was checking kids in, it was like, okay, I've been playing longer than this kid's been alive. And that happened 20 years ago. It's like, holy smokes.
Oh, man.
But yeah.
And so, James, what teams have you played for over the years?
Quite a few, a lot of the old ones. So I started on the original team, a bunch of local field guys like everyone else does. A team called poorly named enough Stormtroopers. We merged with the Texas Rangers at the time. A bunch of old guys, like full on. We're talking 15-man paintball pump. Some guys still using 12 grams. Most of us using California Air, which is the 7 ounces of liquid death, CO2. Joined up with these guys, a bunch of old Vietnam vet dudes, crusty guys. Started playing in the TCC, the Texas Council of Captains, which was the first Texas series where teams actually self-organized and created our own tournament series. From there, played a couple of seasons and got recruited with one of the top Texas teams out of Houston, Texas Bushwhackers. Not to be confused with Ron Kilborn's California Bushwhackers. They both came about the same time. We actually had almost had to throw down with them at a lively tournament and offered to play for the name, but Ron declined to play for the name. So played with the Bushwhackers for several years. Won a state championship or two with them, fighting against guys like Texas Storm back when they first started, and eventually that team had some differences of opinion on what they wanted to do, and bunch of the young guys split off and formed the original Houston Heat. Steve Rabikoff, myself, Cliff Herring, Ray Banks, a couple of young guys, picked up some other dudes and started grinding. And we want to play national events, and so we, dove in head first. Second season of the NPPL, I think it was. Started just grinding away at that, and a couple of years later, this is back when they only had two divisions. You had pro, you had to earn your pro spot, and you had amateur. And I think it was '95 we won the amateur division. Fighting the likes of Enemy and a couple other teams that were from Chicago and whatnot. And eventually from there, Heat went played his course out. Started several of us guys reformed a new team called Adrenaline, where we pulled some young talent out of Dallas. Picked up some Texas Storm guys. Mark Mafia Delgadillo, Albert Schilling from Halo. Mark eventually went on to play with Addicted and Brotherhood and Lockout for a bit, but did Adrenaline, went pro and at World Cup that year. The next season played a couple of tournaments. Just didn't have the sponsor backing, and we at that point we had guys that were burning out. And I just had my first child. It's like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So I stepped away and just started playing just pick up Sundays like I do now, where I just go and play tackle and dummy for other teams. And a good friend of mine, John Tankersley of Tank's Paintball in Houston, was starting. We talked about like we had at that time, it went from 15 man to 10 man down to 5 man. Like everyone's we always get smaller and smaller. But at the time that we had, there was several. It was like the Pure Energy series and the GTS. So we had several 5-man series that were running. But we noticed, like, I just feel like he had all these young guys, but no young players, but they're always scared to jump up and play. So we got together and we created the HRL, the Houston Rookie League, and so that was the first 3-man series. Started running that. I was tournament director for him, and actually, that's where probably most people know me nowadays, is the guy that yelled at them when they were kids, and brought bad news on them when they were getting 1-for-1s and whatnot. So worked with Tank and ran that series for a good 14 years, I believe we ran it. Finally shut it down, and then just been play a pickup here and there, and then the mech scene started popping up again. In the 2000s, I did pump. I did pump play for a while. We did Pump and Stein. Went to California, won an event or two out there, and just tried to push the pump scene here and for a while. And when the mech thing popped up here in the last 5 years, just kind of felt like home again. So started pulling some strings with some friends back in, and guys I met and formed Valhalla, and here we are.
Sweet, yeah.
Long story longer. That's the problem with 34 years, right? It's hard to condense that down.
I mean, there's I was gonna ask you what are some of the names that you've played around with. Like, some of those names flew over my head, but I definitely recognize some heavy hitters in there for sure. I'm sure some of the other players out there and listening that have been in the scene a little bit longer than I have can appreciate some of the players that you've been around. So kind of, you told us like you basically just start playing, caught the bug right away. Nowadays, whenever we see you, the back of your jersey, it doesn't say Cobb on it. It says Beaux. So tell me about that nickname. How does that come around?
Oh, it started from a family nickname, a Jimbo, and like it been shortened to Beaux. And when that first car ride, I went out there, rode with a guy named James, and at the field there was 2 guys. There was 2 other dudes named James, so there were like 4 Jameses there. So finally I said, "Hey, just call me Beaux," which is kind of a passing. and then it just stuck. And then, pre-internet days, right? You only meet people at the events, and introduce myself as Beaux. People call me Beaux, and then next thing you know, it just that became my name. That if someone called me Beaux, it was for paintball. So or your old family. So if you don't have the last name Cobb and call me Beaux, you're probably a paintball player. But
Yeah. Well, that's how I know you. That's how a lot of guys know you. I know you were telling me a story where some of the guys on Valhalla don't even know you as James. They know you as Beaux.
Well, they know me as James here, but I played in a World Cup a couple, back around 2000. Played with Resurrection, Keith Kaminsky's team, his old team from the Houston area. And I played with these guys for several months of practicing. We went out to, grinding every weekend, and we go to the tournament, and we sign, to get the paperwork. Everybody signs their waivers, and we kind of pass them on over to the one guy. And guys organizing me was like, James Cobb. Who the hell's James Cobb? I'm like. Me, he's like, what? And so then we became this whole conversation of like, you travel, you share bedrooms, and you cram 3 dudes in a room. Like, how much you really know these paintball players you travel across the U.S. with? So it's kind of funny. Like, I had no idea that wasn't my real name.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. Well, most of us know you as Beaux now, or James. We kind of know you as both at this point. But so you've been in the scene for quite some time now. So what are some things that you've noticed that has changed in the Texas scene over time?
Oh, a lot. So sadly, some things that haven't changed. It's definitely it's gotten cheaper. Believe it or not, when I first started playing, it was paid $2.75 for a 10-round tube of paint. So paint's gotten cheaper. There's an ebb and flow of focus. Teams it goes national, it goes local, it goes national again. But you still see some of the things that haven't changed is the sort of tribal nature that you kind of see at fields, right? People play at their own, like, X Factor, all just X Factor guys, or Fit. Those teams play out of Fit, and teams play out of Houston Zone or some other team, some other field there, and you don't see a lot of mixture, and that's been without a overarching tournament series to kind of like draw people to play and counter, cross mingle. You still tend to stay in those silos, which really sucks. What's kind of cool when I played recently with the UXBL event, a series a couple years ago, is like you got to see some teams from Houston popping in and Dallas coming down, which is good. So it's
Yeah, it's at least for my team, I know that um on the Texas Titans, there's a lot of players that are actually from Austin and live much closer to Outlaw, or some of them even drive past Outlaw on the way to go practice at X Factor. So I know that at the very least, the San Antonio and the Austin scene have a little bit closer of a relationship just because of distance. But I know that something that we've tried to do is kind of invite more teams from out of town, like like Rampage, like the teams from the Valley, or try to get like the Texas Cyclones or Veteran Militia, or any of those other teams from outside that can come give us a good look. We scrimmage Hypnotic somewhat regularly, of course, because they're close, but they're also like not the team that we see every Sunday. But yeah, it is. I wonder, I guess like a lot of that is probably just due to distance. I mean, you're not going to expect guys that are like, oh, I live in Austin, but this weekend I'm going to drive all the way to Houston to go play, or, kind of rotate among there. So it is nice to connect with those different players and different teams, but also like kind of notice different styles emerge between like X Factor and Fit and Houston. And it's cool to see. Especially as all of these teams are kind of like playing against each other more and more and getting to these higher levels. Anything?
Yeah. Well, just kind of if you talk about Titans, kind of was something that wanted to mention that I neglected earlier was it's great to see teams like the Titans develop farm systems and and expanding instead of like, okay, we're going to play our one division and it's just us, 6 dudes. It's like expanding out rosters, playing multiple lines, multiple divisions. That's something you didn't see in the past, right? with X ball and 5-man squads. You carrying 6 or 7 to a tournament. Or 8 or 10 if you can. It's a little bit easier. The back of the day was 15, 10 people on the team minimum. It's harder to when teams try to do those larger squads. And back in the day, it was just cumbersome because you're talking 25 people just on 2 squads, and it becomes more problematic. But it's great to see what y'all's program are doing, and like Notorious has been great about that sort of developing players, and you see a long line of guys go through that program. It's good to see it's growing our own again.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'd say it's actually more common now. Like it's kind of rare to have a D4, D3 team that doesn't have a D5 counterpart to it. Like most of the teams, at least that play in the USXBL, they all have kind of their own farm systems. Like Titans, we have 4 lines right now. We have a D5 line. We've kind of got like a practice squad, and that's not really the best term for it, but we've got guys that are going to be our D5 line next year, and then we've got our D4 line and then our premier line. So that's like almost 30 guys across 4 lines for one program. And and we're just one of like 6 or 7 teams at X Factor. So you see also like especially teams like Innocent Bystanders, they've got a huge farm system. They've got like 5 different lines across their thing, and I'm sure the same thing's going on at Fit with Shut Up We're Trying. Greed even has Avarice and Bandits buddies playing in their different divisions. So a lot of teams are coming up with these farm systems, and the benefit of that, at least what I'm seeing, is it's a lot more teams are a lot more invested in bringing in the new guys.
Yeah, it's democratizing the knowledge, right? You're sharing out knowledge. You develop the baseline gets higher. It's not peaked with individual teams and talent, and they just crush everybody and hide it away. You democratize the talent. All boats rise with the tide, right? So all the teams get better. Your better quality of teams go out and play national events, better national showings, brings more visibility to Texas. It's a good cycle to help be involved with.
Oh yeah, and you see it now in the NXL. Texas teams are always podiuming or taking first place. Like Cyclones won a lot of events in D4 last year. They're always in the running for D3. Shut Up We're Trying. Last year we also had the Coalition Squad. A couple other teams I'm missing in there as well. I know back in 2020, right before the shutdown, Ruthless out of X Factor won D5. Texas Titans won D4 5-man last year. Like there's always Texas teams doing really well, even up at the top. Like professionally, you got 3, sometimes 4 Texas teams. You got Diesel, Houston Heat, X Factor, and who knows? Austin Notorious might be joining them really soon.
Well, we hope that it works out for them. They've definitely been putting in the work, so we'd love to see it pay off for them.
For sure. So what are some other things that you have seen kind of change over this time period?
Significant lack of camo. That's one thing that's changed over there. Yeah, but that's one thing that's when I first started playing, it was you'd on a breakout you would literally sprint for 100 yards before you saw anybody. It was a huge field, 45-minute games. This sort of the reduction in team size, reduction in environments, and like the man-made field was big. I remember the switch over between playing in the woods to playing on Hyperball at World Cup the first year was like mind blowing. Like holy smokes, an actual field that's mirrored. We never had a mirrored. We had balanced fields. There's a difference between balanced and mirrored, and like to have a balanced and mirrored field was great. There's no bad ends at that point. But yeah, seeing that and just the general engagement. I also noticed this has started happening 20 years ago, but the youth trend, right? Like when I first started playing, it was expensive, and you got a bunch of old dudes not playing golf or playing paintball instead. But you see, as paintball's costs went down, kids started playing it. You got more of a youth trend, and that happened a long time ago. But it's still definitely apparent that especially today, like the modern game is definitely a physical, way more sort of athletic game than it used to be. It's more tactical versus strategic. So it definitely benefits the smaller, faster guys.
Oh, for sure. But even then, you still got the old guys that are at the top of their game. You've got Dynasty, you've got X Factor, like all of these teams that their average age is much higher than like Columbus Level or the ML Kings, where they've got a whole bunch of teens and 20 somethings that they've got wheels, but the guys at the top of the game are the guys that have been doing it a long time, like Ryan Greenspan, Colt Roberts, guys like that.
You look, yeah, definitely. When you look at it takes the work, right? You got to put the work in. I mean, you look at professional tennis, right? You got Roger Federer just retired this year, but Nadal, Djokovic, these guys are in their 30s and they're still doing a sport that people used to tap out when they're 22. So it's all about taking care of yourself and putting the work in and trying to not keep the reaper away, right? So
and even look at recent news coming out of San Diego. Oliver Lang coming back. He hasn't played a professional tournament in 6 years. He apparently comes back last weekend and kills it at practice, and now he's coming back for Cup. Like, he hasn't missed a step.
That'd be great to see. He was definitely one of those those sort of markers that changed the game, right? Like watching him do breakouts and whatnot. Was definitely reading the field at a different level than the guys around him at the time. So it'll be great to see to watch the feed and see him come back.
So when I first met you, it was when you were on the notorious D5 line in the 2020 season, and they pretty much ran the table, got first place at almost all of the USXPLs that year. So even though y'all smashed that whole season, and you also won the HCPS event 2 weekends ago with Fate, you've pretty much just stuck to the mechanical events besides that one event 2 weeks ago. So what is it about mechanical play that you prefer over electronic?
Well, I love paintball to begin with. I love playing all sorts of stuff, but there's something about the mech game that is there's a lot more opportunity, I feel, to move and to take advantage of and to create opportunities. Because in fast gun, I'll refer to X ball as fast gun. In fast gun, 10.5 balls a second. Your job is to hold this lane and keep these guys from moving, right? And you can stop them from moving. People can't bump in, and that's that is part of the it's all lane control and zone control. In mech, you don't have that ability to stop someone from bumping. I mean, yeah, you could pull a stream. I've been clocked with a really well-tuned autococker. I hit 13 balls a second, but that was for a very short window. So it's like you don't have that sort of constant lane control. So there's a lot of opportunities for movement that happen. So people you can shift positions a lot. You can move up the field. I feel a lot easier. Just because of that sort of lack of volume or lack of lane control. Plus, I personally prefer. I've played 7-man. I played 10-man. I prefer 10-man, just because it allows you. In fast gun, you get a guy on the tape. He shoots his mirror out. He wraps, puts the guy in. He's suddenly down the side. He gets a 4-pack, right? It's like boom. Hit the buzzer, you're all gone, reset, do it again. Versus, on 10-man, you shoot one guy out, there's still 3 guys in that zone. So you've got to work with your teammates to create kills and be able to open up a side by working out that chess game of getting into positions to be able to pinch out players and make shots. So that's why I like it. It allows you. It's a lot more opportunity for movement, and it's also more work in the mid game for slow guys like me to be able to get up and up into the mix and try to get some kills.
Funny you mentioned the more opportunity for movement part. I feel like at least in the last year or two in the NXL anyway, when they introduced the new bunker set with the big bricks and those kind of giant wings, I feel like at least with the layouts that have come out for NXL this year, they've always kind of jammed a lot of those things right up the middle. So there's no longer hey, I'm just going to sit and shoot the net for a couple of minutes and keep anybody from going anywhere or shoot these bounce shots. It feels like there's a lot of sight blockers now, and there is a lot more of that opportunity.
Yeah, that definitely, I've noticed that too. You get a lot more sort of counter moves that are happening in the center of the field, like you see, the game with Dynasty and Legion, Red Legion last tournament, where like guys going through and then back and forth through the middle. It was just fun to see. It definitely brings a little bit more of spontaneity and like sort of gumption for teams guys to make moves on.
Yeah, for sure. So, James, do you have any interest in returning to play fast gun formats in the future?
I guessed it with Fate because I know those guys from the HRL days. This last weekend I happened to be in Houston for the weekend. My focus is on doing the 10-man mech. So it's like I have a limited amount of weekends I could play, and so I like to put my focus on that run for Valhalla. So never say never if opportunities arise themselves, but all things being equal, my heart goes to mech every time.
So, speaking of kind of your heart being in mech, you in Texas, you have that reputation of being a huge supporter, a huge advocator for mecha vets in Texas. So, what does for anybody who has never played mechanical events before, what does the format and the structure of mechanical tournaments look like?
It's a throwback, right back to the old days. So in fast gun, you're playing points. You race to 3, race to 5, whatnot. You don't have that. You get a draw like this last ICPL event we went to. We had 8 prelim games, and so we played on each of the fields a couple of times, each of the ends a couple of times, and it's one shot. You play the game, you score, you get. You get points for every kill you get. You get points for every live player you have at the end. You get points for pulling the flag. And you get points for hanging. The most point goes for the hang. So it's all about a points game. It's like trying to accumulate as much points as you can. So you want to shoot all of them before and try to have them shoot any of you. Like if you want to keep everybody count. So you want to keep as many bodies alive as possible. And then it's a matter of going to the other thing is like it's sort of blindish because there's no release, there's no you can see these fields that are they don't typically change the field from event to event. So last year we played in Chicago, and this we went back in this year. They were the same field, so we had some experience on before, so it was a little less problematic. But just you got to go out there and walk the fields the day before. You spend an hour, at least an hour in each field, kind of learning what the shots are and what you can do on this field and what where the soft zones are. What can you crawl here? Can how do you get some players up in this area? Especially the woodsball field is a whole different animal. A big prep for that. It's actually a lost art. We've kind of noticed this last event. It's like, man, there's a couple of old teammates I would love to have gotten back. They were really excellent about reading fields and game planning. It would have been loved to have them out there to do that. But yeah, it's I'm kind of going all over the place. But it's it's walking a blind field. It's you play 8 games and then your total points move you on. The better you do, you can get you always shoot for that first round bye into the semis so you can avoid the wild card round, much like the NXL. But yeah, other than that, it's paintball. So
Right. So you mentioned fields as in plural. So at these events, are you playing is there multiple different layouts that you have to play in the same tournament?
Yeah. So we've played typically three fields per event. There was last in Tampa last year. There was one of the best hyperball fields I ever played on. It was immaculate. It was perfectly gridded, perfectly mirrored. There's a hyperball field. There was a hybrid field, which was kind of a catch-22 of parts and bits, and was really tiny. We ended up playing the finals on that one against the Saber Wolves. And then there was a mounds field. So you have different stylistically ways you have to play. Like mounds, imagine playing half inflated bunkers, right? So there's no hard edges. That's kind of all sort of soft and round. So you got to really be aware of aerial shots and blind shots coming in on that. So it's distinctly different. Then we played in Maryland where there was a hyperball field, a really nice hyperball field on turf. There was another woodsball field which was very wide and short, but you had really big stick bunkers on and some nice big trees, which you don't get here in Texas very often. And then there was another hybrid field that had trenches and barrels and an old house, like an old structure that was set square on the 50. So there's like a variety of like sort of environments, and on that field you couldn't see side to side, so you could have stuff go down on the low side, and the guys on the high side have no idea what's happening. So it's stresses that communication across the field and the back line, becomes paramount in those situations. But yeah, it's like that, and then Chicago had two hyperball fields. Had the Snake, the historic zipper field that they played back in the 2000s. It's still there. We played on that, and then a woods ball field. So like that, when that was big with a ravine and all sorts of crazy stuff, where you're trying to find out which end has the advantage, and what bunkers you could do, what key bunkers you need to get to, and what key bunkers you need to keep them out of. So
Right. So it sounds
constantly
like
varied.
it,
It's kind of like
these
CrossFit,
fields,
right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Constantly varied.
There's no practicing these layouts multiple weeks ahead of time, or getting to dial in a specific bounce shot or anything like that. It's really just truly testing who is the most well-rounded team out there. In
that's also, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but that's also why you sit out there, and guys are watching games all the time. It's not like play our set and leave. It's like you're constantly out there trying to find that shot you missed, or that angle that someone else saw that you didn't. So it's always a challenge.
Oh, for sure. So is there a scene for mechanical outside of scenario play in Texas?
Not yet, and that's the rub, right? That's kind of what we're running into for us, is playing 10-man, right? The bulk of our guys, we'll kind of give you some background on Valhalla. I had ran it, I played last year in the ICPL with one of the Fight Club teams of my buddy Dave Reich. Shout out to Dave, shot me last at the ICPL in Chicago. I told him I'd mention it. He gave me a hard time. But I played with him and some of his buddies. We got dead last, got smoked. But while I was out there, I ran into John Jackson out of Houston. He was playing with Farside for that event, and we just started chatting. It's like, dude, what are you doing here? I didn't know you're coming. So I'd met John and Fuzzy when they first started playing. They first started their career in the HRL, so I watched them come up as little kids coming in and turning into who they are today. It's been a fun journey to watch those guys. But so we started chatting, and decided pull together the team. We had played about 2 years ago. We had done a 7-man down at Tanksfield. He had done a one-off 7-man event that we did mech, and he just never could get the momentum going until John. I was talking to John. It's like, hey man, do you want to put a Texas team together, go win some tournaments? Because in the ICPL, you're allowed to have two pro players on your roster. So I said, do you think you and Fuzz want to come along? And he was like, oh hell yeah. So reached out to the rest of the guys, the loose group that was Valhalla at the time, and it's funny when you have two pro guys, because we're going, how fast guys buy their plane tickets. So that really kicked us off, and we been running ever since. But back to your question about the scene. That's kind of the problem, is like there's no other 10-man teams that consistently play 10-man. Like Paintball Fit's an amazing team. They won the pro spot this year. We came up short in the ICPL. We were the front runners for most of the season, but then just this last tournament finished 8th and knocked us 2 spots down into third place. Got jumped by Fit. They a strong team, but they're also they play semi-pro, so it's like they play paintball no matter what. So, but to get them, it's hard to get them to play and practice a 10-man, because they're always practicing for the next semi-pro event. So that, and then Diesel puts the team in, but again they're practicing the pro stuff. So it's been very hard for us to get like a true 10-on-10 practice. We worked with the Titans have y'all been gracious to come out and play us a couple of times, but y'all got y'all's things going too. So the one thing I have started is a Facebook group at Texas Mechanical Paintball, and I was last year, prior to really the season kicking off, I was doing it more regularly. Was doing like a mech day, right? So it's kind of like the street ball format, where like people talk with the field, have arrange a time, like on this Sunday we're going to be at X Factor, and it's going to be that you talk with them about, here's the paint price, here's the entry, come out and then basically whoever shows up break up and do street ball style, 7-on-7, 10-on-10, 15-on-15, whatever we got. We just kind of play it that way. We did that a couple of times in Houston. Did one in Dallas. Did several at X Factor. And that's the sort of thing that I think this would be the catalyst to help sort of create this more of a mech scene in Texas. There's at this point, we hear talk about it, which would be great, but unless a series can pop up to be able to say, here's a mech series in Texas, that would give a team something to focus on. It's kind of hard to get that thing started. I've had experience running tournaments in the past. I'm really looking forward to someone else doing that. So hopefully Bunkerfest can. I know they've mentioned about having some mech events eventually. I know that there's some of the organizers up in Dallas have talked about doing some mech events. So we'd love to see that sort of pop up to be the catalyst to help create more mech teams, or at least create the enthusiasm for it. But there is actually, I'd be remiss to mention this, that Paintball Fit, those guys do a great job. They do their mechanical X-Ball series, where it's draft format. You don't have to have a team. You put you set up you give them your IPPA number, and they draft players, and you just play pool pickup true X-Ball. And I've done that several times, and that's a real fun way to play. Mechanical on modern fields, so it's not too foreign for folks, but that's a great way, and I think they do a great job of just raising mech awareness up there. So shout out to the Cowboys and their dad JD for doing that. That's some amazing stuff they're doing up there. Matter of fact, they have one coming up in November, so the last one for the year. So
yeah, those events look like a ton of fun. I have not been able to get up there for any of them yet, but I would love to
highly recommend.
I would love to play more.
I highly recommend.
So, I mean, those events are great, but again, it's street ball style, and it's not so much like, hey, we've got our own team that we always play with that are competing against other teams that always play together. So, I know that we've got the guys up at Bunkerfest saying that they're going to include mechanical in their events. I think at one point, and I don't know if there's any truth to this rumor, but at one point I had heard that down at X Factor there was talk of building a mounds field, but that was maybe a year or two ago. I don't know if anything's happened with that since then. But where would you like to see the mechanical side of the game get to, as far as maybe events, player base, things like that?
We'd love to see the moon, see the moon and the stars, but a consistent opportunity to be able to practice other teams. Tournaments in Texas would be great. Going off and doing these national tournaments are fun, but it does strain the pocketbook, and it does force you sometimes to have to fill in a couple of spots when guys just can't make it. But a tournament or two in Texas would be awesome. It'd be great to just see other teams around, or you could scrimmage, organize some scrimmages and whatnot. That'd be great as well. So any growth is good growth at this point. So I'm not going to complain with anything.
Sure. All right. So before we continue, we got a couple of people in the chat watching the show. Y'all, welcome. If you have anything that you would like to ask Beaux, make sure that you get your comments in the chat, and we will read them towards the end of the show. We've got a segment dedicated to that. So if you got questions you want to ask Beaux, get them in. We'll get to them toward the end. All right. So continuing. So James, what has been your favorite moment in your playing career so far?
Boy. There's been a lot of fun moments, but probably my favorite is just back in the early 2000s when we did Pumpenstein was a team. We did pump play. Got invited to go out and play in a tournament out in LA. It's called the NSA, National Stock Class Association or something like that. But you can still play. It was pump with auto triggers. You just had to use the 10-round tubes to load load your hopper with. Went out there. It was in Anaheim behind this flea market. There was an old soccer arena style soccer field turned into a paintball field. There was 15 teams from all over the country were there, but a lot of Southern California teams. Pulled a team with it was me, Jason Watson from Technotrigger, Jason Mullenbelt, TF, professor, used to live in Houston, Keith Kaminsky, Will Powell from Epic, young kid we brought in, and a little unknown kid named Matt Fuzzy Jackson came and played with us, and went out there. First game off, we pulled the Hitmen, which was like at the time they're running high with Sonny Lopez and all their guys. And they just straight smoked us off the field. We were like walked off like, what the hell just happened? Like two of us, we just started doing the math. Like two of us got hit on the break and it just went bad. But what was fun was the format was you had you played the prelims, and if whoever was 1 and 2 played for first, and whoever was 3 or 4 played for third. So like your ranking out of the prelims ended up where you had to be at the end, and you played 2 out of 3 at the end. And all tournament long, we were trying to come back from that. Like we win some games and we drop one every once in a while. And you start doing the math, right? Like, oh, we need these 2 teams to stalemate. Well, they did. Like everything started going our way. Next thing you know, we were in second place against the Hitman, and we go out the next day. They start playing these games. They play all the games to get to the first and second place. And we're out there. And we walk in the field, and the entire arena is ringed with Hitman fanboys. Like everyone's screaming for them. Play the first best 2 out of 3. Play the first one. Play the first point. We had a Kaminsky shoots Chris Tregarth, who plays the Ironman now, bounces one off his face, but doesn't think that he breaks it. He ends up tries to close the game, gets shot out, and they win that point. We end up turning around and won the next 2 points, and we're basically just on top of the moon, high five and screaming, and then we realize like it's dead silent all around us. Like we're the only ones making noise. Like, yeah, let's get our shit and get out of here. So we're like, yeah, it was a great time. There was no problems, but it was just like the idea of like we're going, yay, high, single high clapping sounds, and it was like it was a good time. It was fun to play with Fuzz and do that. So I traded some texts with some messages with Tregarth, and after the Ironman played Impact this last tournament. So yeah, this is just so you know, this is not the first time you played Fuzzy. Fuzzy ran him down one time. So this is not the first time you played Fuzz. I seen the picture from that tournament, and he's like, "Holy smokes!" So yeah, that's one of my fondest memories is that weekend with those guys. That was a fun time.
And I can't imagine just going in as this team with the new young kid and basically upsetting the hometown favorites out of there. Great moment there.
Yeah, they didn't imagine it either. So, but yeah, they, to their credit, they had like Derek Obataki and a couple of those other guys. We saw them again like the next year. We played the MPPL out in Huntington Beach, and we walked on to play them. And Derek gives me a big hug. I'm like, dude, this is not what I need right now. You're supposed to be the bad guy. Don't be friendly to me. But they're great guys. They're totally great guys. I love playing with those guys.
Awesome. All right, so getting on to what kind of your main title here is. So you're one of the founders of the Valhalla mechanical team, and this year your team has played the entire ICPL series. You've also played NXL Mechanical 7-Man Open in Dallas. So what's the atmosphere like playing at these mechanical events?
It's actually really fun. It's laid back. I mean, people there's the intensity. People want to win, but anytime you walk to the ICPL events, it's like, first off, you're like, for younger guys, it's like looking at old paintball magazine. There's guys out there that you've seen play, or you read about play, you heard about play, back 20 years ago. But it's a lot more sort of festive. You don't get a lot of no one's bulldogging each other, trying to act all tough or anything. It's just a lot of laughs and real high camaraderie. The games are intense, but afterwards, it's just a lot more sort of general laughing, and a lot of more joking and laughing than I remember back in the day when we used to go play. I can tell you that. A lot more smiles than I remember seeing.
All right. Well, I wish I could. I would have done a mechanical event by now. Haven't been able to yet, but I've got my EMAC in the closet just waiting. Hopefully it'll be there soon.
There you go, man.
So you've already said of the different mechanical formats, you prefer 10-man over 5-man and 7-man. So just remind us again, why is that you prefer 10-man over the other formats?
10-man's typically played on Hyperball, just because it sheer numbers. And again, it's that sort of you end up having layers of players instead of one. You have ones, twos, and threes, or what we used to call fronts, mids, and backs.
Mhm.
And you'll have to play against a back, a mid, and a front at all times. So it's not like you have an opportunity to break a side really easy by shooting one dude and running down the field. It was interesting when we played the 7-man up in Dallas, the Lone Star Open this year. I was expecting another field. So we got there, and it was literally the same X ball field that everyone else played on. So it's kind of funny. It's like imagine taking, you walk a field, you have multiple game plans. We basically just played every bunker because you had 7 guys. So it was like you have options, or you just throw them on there. And I'm not, it was a blast, and I had a great time with that. Again, paintball's paintball, but for me, I think there's something about that structure of 10-man where you have more communication. It's typically more open field, a lot more sort of movement versus like initial bunkers. Still try to hold zones and move out. So
Got it. So, um, throughout this year, you were playing in the ICPL. You had a second place, a third place, and you were really close to earning that pro spot at the end of the year. So, does Valhalla have plans next year to continue to compete in the ICPL and maybe earn that pro spot for next season?
we're in the off season now, and we need to have that team conversation. One of the downsides with what the ICPL is doing, they've gone to the major and minor format. So the minor events are 2 days. So you take a Friday off, you play Saturday and Sunday for prelims. Into Sunday, you do semifinals, finals, like a long day, but you knock it out in 2 days. The majors, we have to fly in on a Thursday, so you take an extra day. So you do 2 days of prelims. The Sunday is dedicated all to semifinals and finals. So we have to find out whether or not my guys are also at a different point in life, right?
Right.
These are former competitive players that still have the desire to go out and play hard, but they've got kids, they've got responsibilities, so we'll get to figure out if that's what our goal is this year, and sort that out. So we may do 7-man for maybe focus on the NXL. We may try to do both if we can get enough. Maybe we look to expand the roster a bit and do both events. But as far as chasing that pro spot, we want to win. We want to win the championship. We want the ring. That's what we want. The pro spot, the problem with the pro spot is you have to play every event from then on. So So it's like then we're committed, and we lose that sort of ability to pop into a Pittsburgh Open or pop into one of these other this other alternative league, the WPPL, I think it is, a WCPL, something like that. It's like similar sort of competitor to the ICPL. We chose to do the ICPL this year because it was a known quantity, versus this other one, which was like independent tournament promoters coming together under a banner, which means like your experiences may vary between events.
Right.
So we wanted that sort of consistent, know what we got throughout the entire event. So long story short, still sorting that out. I would like to see us go and win that damn ring. We got too close this year to taste it, to not to walk away with it.
Oh, the rings are the best. That's definitely, if you get a ring. I mean, I've got one it's on the shelf over there behind me from the Bunker Fest event last year. It's the hardware. It's kind of helps you keep those memories forever. And I've got on the wall behind the camera here, I sometimes pull out the tomahawk and like the Mardi Gras medals. This like me show this one off. I mean, this one I don't have a ring with it because it was a third place medal, but like stuff like this where like the
nice.
mask, like whole mask.
Like, cool.
Like that's cool as hell. Come on now.
Oh hell yeah.
So
yeah, man, that's you got hardware's good.
So if you were to continue, do you know like the availability of John and Fuzzy? Or I know they're like pretty heavily involved with Impact nowadays, and they're making cross country trips just to go practice. But so what do you think their availability is if y'all were to continue?
I need to talk to John about that. Yeah, but I would like to hope. It really boils down to what their availability is. John is an amazing dude. I love being around him and Fuzz, and all signs at this point are looking good. So I'm hoping he's able to do that. Who knows? I mean, he could be picked up by a team and play again next year. So if he's playing NPP, playing in NXL, the likelihood of him playing MEC, limited time and running pro edge paintball in Houston, who knows? But if all the John and Fuzz I could get, I would take. But that's also where we've talked a bit about this as a team. Is like I'd love to have a pool of Texas pros that we can lean on. Like hey, if we know that one of these guys can't make it, or we know what's happening in this event, and if we have a couple of guys that want to go and have availability, we'd love to be able to leverage that and represent Texas. That's the other thing is everyone in Valhalla is Texas, either lived in Texas. We have a guy that's moved away, but he's from Texas, but everyone's all Texas boys, and so that's what we want to keep going. Is like we want the MEC team from Texas. So,
Texas.
Which is why Valhalla is such an important name because it's so Texan.
Well, Texas is definitely a lot of talent and can represent anywhere. It's really important that we get Texas representation and like Texas players and their names kind of out there. For those of y'all in the chat, we're kind of getting towards the end of our show. So if you have something that you want to ask James, go ahead and get it in now before we get to the end. James, for any players that are out there that are maybe interested or wanting to play more mechanical events, do you have any tips or maybe like people to contact to give them?
I would suggest check out that Texas Mechanical Paintball Facebook group. That'd be great. I'll start kicking that off this year again, scheduling events. A good opportunity just to get out there and play. And the other thing is, go play mech. I mean, if you've seen me out more than once, go out there and run a pickup line, and I'll shoot back against fast guns because knowing your gun is important. And paintball is paintball. So kind of like the dodgeball movie. If you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball. If I could survive and put up a fight and against fast gun, then my chances of surviving a fight with mech are pretty good. So, but yeah, join that group. Any opportunity, if you see people playing those paintball fit events, those are great to jump in on. I'd love to chat with X Factor and try to see if we can get something similar happening down there. It'd be great. But any opportunity you can play, just get out and play.
Yep, for sure. All right, James. So this is a question I ask everybody at the end of the show, just to help get others' names out. Also helping me to figure out who do I need to get on next. So, are there any Texas-based teams, players, brands, projects, fields, tournament series, anything in Texas that have caught your attention? So, who does the rest of Texas, if they don't know about them, who do they need to know about?
And you're doing such a great job of getting on all these people. It's hard to say name someone that you haven't already had on or you're already planning to have on. But you got me stumped there. I thought about this as like, I just would like to shout out to all the guys I've known over the years, and the Valhalla guys that have come back. But nothing new under the sun, unfortunately for me.
All right. Well, part of it is just that's a tough question because there's so many great individuals in Texas that all have great stories. So that's part of why I'm doing the show, just to help everybody get their stories out and give them that platform and that opportunity.
Yeah, it's great. I've watched several of them earlier. Yours with Colt Roberts was fun to watch. Seeing guys like that. Remember when those were the kids that were coming out and playing. But it's just great to see guys like that have played at such a high level for such a long time to continue to play, grind, and and be as excellent and be such an ambassador too of the sport that really help grow younger players is great to see.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of good names out there. Hopefully we can keep getting more people on here, keep getting their stories told. So let's see, some people in the chat, they're saying your favorite moment of your career is getting to play with Rick Hall. Duh.
Yeah, Rick is my boy. Yeah, that's always a favorite moment.
Yeah, I got to play with Rick at the last X Factor Paintball series. I was one of the captains for that series, and he ended up on my team. It was fun for sure. Always a pleasure, Rick.
Oh yeah,
Let's see.
yeah.
Another person on Twitch here, they're commenting. I played 10 man with Todd for the first time like 2 months ago. I don't have my mech eye on this, so I turned my gun down to 7.5. I think they negotiated. Well, cool. I'm glad to see more people getting into the mech scene. It's a fun part. I know, like at least on the national broadcast, like Matty Marshall talking about how important it is to like everybody kind of getting back to their roots of how paintball started. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. People tend to think back, like when they started as the golden age. So I think it's kind of fun to see people look back at like the early days of hyperball and early days of airball, and like, oh man, that was the golden time, and kind of going back to like what they did originally when they played. That's always fun.
All right. Well, James, that does it for our episode. Thank you so much for hopping on. Do you have any last shout outs or things you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, man. I appreciate you having me on. I do want to shout out to Pro Edge Paintball, to Tanks Paintball, X Factor, all those fields and stores that help Valhalla and help keep us going. HK Army for the cool gear. So just want to shout out to those guys for supporting us and helping us keep mech strong and taking it to them. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, one more question I did think about. So you're seeing a lot of mech play come back in, and now you're seeing a lot of companies come out with mech guns or mech frames to go along with their fast guns. Like CS2 has had their mech frame. They've released the G-Tech mech frames for a while now. Die has mech frame that just got released for the DSR Plus. Like, what are you thinking about? Like all of this kind of new gear that's coming out for mech, or do you think you're just going to stick with the tried and true autocockers and things like that?
I love autocockers. I was, early adopter in Texas to autocockers, but I shoot a CS2 with the mech frame. It's hard to beat. It's hard to beat the consistency, the efficiency, the reliability of those guns. It's just amazing. It's great to see. It's great to see these companies supporting the mech events, and hopefully that'll be a catalyst also where people can come out and play. One thing to be said about you mentioned about someone turning their guns down. Like the ICPL, I think was smart about doing that, where you could still play with a fast gun in mech. You just have to shoot 5.5 balls a second. You just turn it down. I think there's going to be a compromise because when that original number came out, whenever everyone was thinking everyone was going to be shooting autocockers and such, it's a more on par for speed. But the mech guns, the space mechs, as we would call them, they're such good quality now, and they shoot so fast with hair valves and whatnot that I think running up to like 7.5 with a fast gun may be the future for that. But it's a great opportunity for people who want to come out and play with those mech, like especially those mech days that we're having. Come out and play with the guns you already have. You don't have to invest anything new. Just turn your gun down, with the rate of fire down, and have at it.
Well, I like the whole thing. I mean, I have a separate eMech, but for those that are like thinking about doing mech, like mech frames are only like $200 or if that, where you can just swap it in and out. You don't have to learn a new platform or anything. It's just you have to take 2 screws out and slap the other thing on, and boom, you're good to go. So it is cool to see the companies like starting to embrace this new wave of mechanical that's coming in. Hopefully, it grows in the future.
Absolutely, it's great to see that when you see when companies are making those products, they see a market, and it's great to see that nationally. But love to see more of that trickle down into Texas, and I'd love to see us scheduling having events that support mech in Texas would be awesome. Until that point, if we can get scrimmage weekends where we throw 4 or 5 teams out there and they go at it, that's the next best thing, right? So I'm all about trying to like create as much of the scene and environment as we can.
For sure. All right, James. So that does it. Thank you again for coming last minute, filling in for Nico Hyde on this episode. And thank everybody in the chat. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So be sure to go follow Valhalla. That's at Valhalla Mech Paintball Team on Facebook. So what other guests would y'all like to see on the show? Be sure to leave a comment down below. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button. The show goes live weekly here on twitch.tv/inthepitspaintballpodcast, and recordings are posted to YouTube, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify the next day. Shout out to my partners and sponsors, FU Athletics, here with the new logo here on the screen. We got Get That Shot, Paintball Kumite, and Compete. So I said the show goes live weekly, but actually we're going to be doing another episode tomorrow night because of World Cup being next week. I'm actually flying out on Tuesday night, so I won't be able to do the live stream next Wednesday. But instead of just missing a week, we're going to do one ahead of time. So tomorrow night, we will get Nick Mays of Mason's PB. Everybody in Texas knows that name as well-known retailer and used marker reseller based up in Dallas. So we're going to have him on tomorrow night at 6:30, not the usual 7:30, and I'll make all these posts. But so yeah, we're going to have Nick Mays tomorrow night at 6:30, and I also just released my November schedule. So the week after World Cup, we're actually going to have a guy, his name is Christian Woodmansee. He's a current player for Energy Elite, which, yeah, I know that's not Texas, but he did play an event last year with AC Dallas, so we're going to count it. So we'll have Christian Woodmansee week after Cup. After that, we will have Nathan Roberts of AC Diesel, also a former teammate of mine on the Texas Longhorns in the NCPA. And then we're rounding out the month, last day of November 30th, with Hector Andrade and Rolando Lopez of Balls Out down in the Valley. So we've got a lot of good episodes for November. So y'all, thank you so much for supporting the show. We'll see you tomorrow night. James, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Have a good one.